President Trump recently made a significant announcement regarding cartel operations that goes beyond typical campaign rhetoric. Standing with law enforcement and military officials, he revealed unprecedented enforcement results from his first 9 months back in office, including the arrest of numerous cartel members and foreign terrorists, seizure of 70 to 90 tons of narcotics, and recovery of over 1,000 illegal weapons. These aren't small-time dealers, but high-level operatives from international organizations that have long plagued American communities. The scale of these seizures is remarkable, equivalent to filling multiple semi-trucks with drugs intended for American streets. Trump signaled a departure from traditional approaches of endless meetings and diplomatic requests that produce little results. His administration authorized lethal strikes against cartel vessels in international waters, taking action where previous governments hesitated due to concerns about optics and bureaucracy. The fundamental question becomes what government's primary responsibility is: protecting citizens and securing borders against criminal organizations flooding communities with deadly substances. While Washington previously held hearings and funded studies without stopping the flow, Trump's approach focused on tangible results. For families who've lost loved ones and watched communities deteriorate, this represents overdue justice rather than politics. However, as these results emerged, opposition quickly shifted the conversation from effectiveness to legality and procedure. Democratic lawmakers questioned Trump's authority and accused him of executive overreach, demanding investigations into whether these operations were constitutional. This contrasts sharply with reactions to previous administrations' overseas drone strikes, which were largely portrayed as decisive leadership rather than constitutional crises. The double standard raises concerns about America's political class prioritizing internal conflicts over addressing genuine threats. While some worry about escalation and increased violence, the alternative of continued inaction carries its own massive costs measured in lives lost and communities destroyed. Trump's approach, though controversial, operates on the principle of protecting American citizens first, and the numbers show more seizures and arrests in 9 months than some administrations achieved in 4 years. Yet, this wasn't the dominant story in media coverage. Instead, attention focused on White House renovations, specifically Trump's plans to renovate the East Wing and build a grand ballroom. Despite the project being privately funded by major corporations with no taxpayer money involved, critics accused him of wasting resources and questioned his priorities. This obsession with interior design, while significant security operations unfold, reveals media priorities and perhaps fears about what such permanent presidential markers represent. Throughout history, architecture has symbolized power and permanence. Trump's renovation signals he's reclaiming the White House as a venue for projecting American strength and hosting world leaders for generations. This permanence threatens opponents who prefer viewing his presidency as temporary rather than transformative. The controversy spread to Congress, where House Democratic leadership called it a massive pay-to-play scheme and promised investigations, despite no evidence of explicit exchanges for policy outcomes. Meanwhile, New York City experienced its own political earthquake when Mayor Eric Adams endorsed Andrew Cuomo for the next mayoral race. Cuomo, who resigned as governor amid scandal just years ago, is being rehabilitated because the Democratic establishment fears the alternative. Zohran Mamdani, a far-left candidate leading in polls who advocates defunding police, releasing inmates, and fundamentally restructuring city operations. This reflects how repeated leadership failures drive people toward anyone promising something different, whether Trump in 2016, progressive candidates in primaries, or someone like Mamdani rising from obscurity to frontrunner. Adams sees Cuomo as representing pragmatic, experienced governance, but many New Yorkers experiencing neighborhood decline, dangerous subways, and soaring costs, while quality of life plummets aren't seeking a return to the past but radical change. Recent debates illustrated this dynamic, with Mamdani presenting himself as a new generational voice, while Cuomo defended against past allegations. When pressed on specifics about freezing rents or maintaining safety with fewer police, Mamdani pivoted to systemic oppression rhetoric without concrete answers. To his supporters, the current system is so broken that any change seems preferable, demonstrating the danger when governance becomes so ineffective that people embrace untested ideologies. Polling reveals interesting patterns, with American-born New Yorkers slightly preferring Cuomo while foreign-born residents, particularly recent immigrants, favor Mamdani significantly. This suggests those who've experienced recent progressive governance effects remain skeptical of going further left, while newer arrivals may be more receptive to his message. This pattern appears in cities nationwide, raising questions about what happens when such experiments fail and whether voters correct course or double down. These situations reflect a broader political realignment beyond traditional categories. The real battle is between fundamentally different governance approaches. One prioritizing delivering tangible results and solving problems measured by concrete outcomes. The other focused on advancing social justice and restructuring society, according to ideological principles, measuring success by whether correct groups were elevated rather than overall improvement. Trump's cartel crackdown exemplifies results-oriented governance, identifying threats, assembling teams, providing clear objectives, and empowering action that produced measurable results. This contrasts with many cities' approaches to rising crime through forums, pilot programs, and committees, while problems worsened. The gap between these approaches has grown so wide that sides almost speak different languages, one focused on metrics and outcomes, the other on narratives and systemic issues. Trump's announcement reminded Americans that decisive government action is possible when leaders cut through bureaucracy and focus on outcomes, rather than accepting that meaningful change requires decades of consensus building. If results continue improving and communities feel safer, it validates arguments that speed and decisiveness matter, and that traditional approaches weren't merely slow but ineffective. This terrifies establishments because if people realize government can work efficiently, they'll demand it consistently and stop accepting excuses. The intense backlash exists not because opponents genuinely believe laws are being broken, but because success exposes decades of their failures. America faces urgent challenges: ongoing drug crises, border issues, struggling cities, spiraling debt, and adversaries probing for weaknesses. There's no time for another decade of dysfunction prioritizing political scoring over problem solving. Expect intensifying investigations into Trump's operations, congressional hearings, and legal challenges alongside continued results in arrests and seizures. New York's mayoral race will likely get uglier, serving as a bellwether for Democratic Party direction nationwide. The ballroom controversy will fade because people care more about community safety than interior decorating. The crucial takeaway is thinking independently, rather than letting media or politicians dictate beliefs. Examine results, compare numbers, assess whether situations improve or deteriorate, and whether leaders deliver or make excuses. Consider what kind of country you want in 10 years. One where government functions efficiently with accountable leaders, or one paralyzed by partisan warfare where style trumps substance. This choice manifests not just in elections, but in what we tolerate and demand. Trump's announcement demonstrated that different approaches are possible and that government needn't be slow and ineffective. Regardless of personal feelings about Trump or his methods, this lesson matters as future leaders observe what works and what Americans respond to. The challenge is engaging beyond headlines, comparing sources, conversing with those holding different views, and forming evidence-based opinions. When something works, even from unlikely sources, acknowledge it, because progress transcends party affiliation and reality asserts itself regardless of preferences. America's next chapter is being written now, and while not everyone participates in decision-making rooms, all can be informed citizens demanding better, refusing to accept incompetence disguised as compassion or rewarding politicians prioritizing careers over constituents. Progress comes not from blind loyalty, but from relentlessly pursuing truth and demanding results.